Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the PCR Spotlight. This week, what we're going to be doing is talking to a new construction specialist here in the DFW area. He's a good friend of mine. He works with History Maker Homes. He's one of the sales manager, or if not the sales manager in the area. If you have anybody that's looking to purchase a new home in the area, he knows how to work it. He will get you a home anywhere in any single community within the History Maker property. So not a problem. You don't have. He doesn't have it. He can find it for you. Okay. His name is Johnny Ayala. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about has to do with the actual market itself. You know, what kind of issues they're having as far as new construction and so forth. So I think it's going to be very beneficial to you guys. One last thing before I bring him on is I want to kind of mention something. This market is hot. So you probably notice if you're in the market of buying a house right now, it's very difficult to find a good one, okay, or a house for that matter. And basically, I wanted to show you this particular slide here because this kind of tells you what's going on throughout the U.S., okay? And as you can see, the inventories and activity, for example, the blue low, and then you got stable, and then you got high. And look at Texas. We're at the high market. That means we're very active. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Johnny here. Hey, are you there?
Hey, Jose. How you doing, man?
Good, John. Hey, so first of all, I want to say thank you for bringing your time from a busy schedule that you have. And I know it's after hours for you because you're so busy, you know. So I want to say thank you for coming on board. So
No problem.
okay, good. So what some of the things that we said we were going to talk about, you know, I sent you a list, but I'm going to put up on the screen for everybody to see. So basically, I'm going to have Johnny introduce himself regarding his experience and where he's working at and what subdivision he actually specializes in. But again, he covers the whole market for History Maker Homes, so don't worry about not having inventory there. Okay, he can definitely help you somewhere else. Okay, what kind of effects is this hot market having on new construction? Because it's still affecting it. Some people say, hey, well, you know, we can't find a pre-existing home. We're going to go look at a new construction. Well, how is that affecting that market? Okay. And then we're going to ask Johnny for some recommendations for some agents, you know, for agents and buyers. Okay, well, what's the hack? You know, how do we get into a house quicker so that our clients could get into a home and have a good, a good family structure again? And really, what does he see next in the market? What's going to happen? What to expect for you out there in the community, and also for us as real estate professionals? What can we expect coming up? Okay, so Johnny. So the first thing we want to do is kind of give us a little bit of who is Johnny Ayala. You know, who is this guy?
Well, this guy has been doing this for about 9 years. I actually started with History Maker 9 years ago as an assistant, and I was offered a job to actually be one of their sales counselors in a community out. It's off of 35 in Western Center selling townhomes, and that was 8 years ago.
Oh
And
wow.
I've
Okay.
been with the company ever since. I've been selling. I've sold pretty much in a couple different communities here throughout the DFW. I've sold out in Grand Prairie. I've sold out in over by Texas Motor Speedway, and most of my career I spent it over here in the west side of Fort Worth. So I've seen some I've seen some things happen. A lot of changes. The biggest
Right.
one obviously has been here in the past 3 years. Never in my career have ever seen anything like this, where you would come in one day and you check your email and you got a price increase of $20,000 or another
Right.
$5,000 immediately after that. So in a week span, you get these massive price increases, and it really just it all goes back to what started this whole thing back in 2020, which was a pandemic, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I
So
know you had asked me a couple things on how this affects the builders. Well, I guess we start off with what happened in 2020. When the country had shut down, there was a lot of manufacturing plants that also shut down. So what that did is it created the beginning of the shortage. Now that didn't happen right away, and it was hard to forecast only because a lot of these suppliers were still warehousing a lot of the materials. So they were basically pulling out of the warehousing, hoping that this shutdown wouldn't last for long. But it was the exact opposite. It ended up lasting a lot longer than we anticipated. Now, in the meantime, what was happening is there was a lot of people at home. Oh, well, they're at home and they're in this shutdown of the pandemic day after day. After about a couple of weeks, after about a month or so, they began to realize, hey, you know what? I think it's time for a new home. I've got, these little makeshift classrooms inside my house. I'm teaching my kids from my dining room. I
Yeah.
think it's time we start looking at possibly, pulling some equity from my house and getting into something with some more square footage. So that was happening. And of course, you still have a lot of people that were relocating here because of the big tax breaks that Texas gives you the big corporations. So you had a culmination of almost what's called like a perfect storm. Interest rates were low. People had a ton of equity in their home. They figured they want to go ahead and upgrade their home and use some of that equity. And then you had buyers that were coming in from different states, California, New York, Florida, Colorado, Arizona, with a lot of equity because of the states that they live in. So they saw the Texas market as a huge opportunity. And so we had that influx of people coming here to the DFW area.
Yeah.
So
No,
what does that
that's
do?
totally that. Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, right now we're in a situation that every home that's listed is probably going to get multiple offers. And
Absolutely.
I'm working with a client right now, which I called you regarding this past week regarding a new construction place. So we're going to talk a little bit about those details that we discussed. Hopefully, you can share some of that. But the house that we actually made an offer in, and he offered $10,000 over asking, and it still went for 25,000 over asking, brother. Okay, almost $30,000.
It's crazier than that. Let me tell you. I mean, I
Well,
can tell you, my wife is also a realtor, and
yeah.
as a matter of fact, I remember we talked about this a couple of years ago when she was
Uh-huh.
going into it, and it was right before the pandemic. Like, you know what? It's a good time to be a realtor right now. Little
Uh-huh.
did we know we would be in this situation today.
Right.
But I hear the stories all the time. I mean, people overbidding on homes 30, 40, 50,000, waiving, appraisal issues, waiving option periods. To me,
Uh-huh.
that's that's whole new different ball game there, especially when it comes to, obviously on the realtor side. But
Uh-huh.
how did that now affect me from
Yeah, on the new construction side.
new home construction? So what's happening now is I have a lot of individuals that want to come in here and want to buy a home, but unfortunately, due to those shortages, now we're having what we call allocations. Basically, we're limited to the amount of homes I can sell.
Hey, you
How is
remember
that?
it? I mean, you remember several times when we sat in your office and we're like talking about how you had all these lots that you could not sell. You remember that? It's like they were
Oh
still
yeah.
construction, right? So and you had all these lots that you could not sell. To now, you can't sell them because you have to be at a certain stage of the construction cycle to be able to sell it. It's like it's crazy.
There we go. That
Hmm.
that seesaw effect, man.
Hmm.
That circle. We get to this end of it. It's like, well, it's good and it's bad. It's
Hmm.
really good that, hey, guess what? I've got stuff to sell. It's really bad that I can't sell it as fast as I want to.
Right.
So that's that little teeter totter effect. And yeah, you're right. I do remember that. It's like, man, I've got all these lots, but I just don't have anybody because it was a brand new community.
Yeah.
And man, I tell you what, man, going back and looking at that, when we first met over here at Homestead, we were selling the model that I'm in right now for about 210, 215.
Mm-hmm.
And people thought that was expensive. They're like, oh my God, 2,600 square feet for 210, 215. That same home today, base price starts at about 390.
Oh wow.
390,
Hey,
Jose. That was what, 3 years ago? Three
yeah,
years
that
ago.
I think that had to be around 3 years ago because it was before the pandemic. So obviously it's been a
Definitely
while.
was.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that brings me to the point that as far as the construction. So obviously on a construction you have a timeline that you have to follow, right? So it used to be where you can actually go in, like in those days when you had those empty lots, and say, "Hey, I want that lot, and that's where I want to build my house." Right. So tell us a little bit how that
Mhm.
process has changed since then until now, because I think a lot of people don't understand that there is some change, that's been happening in the new construction.
Absolutely. And the biggest one has to do with your build times. See, what people need to understand is that as a builder, we have what we call a build schedule. Well, that build schedule takes into consideration how many trades we have available. So if we know that we have let's say a crew of two framers that can frame an average of two houses a week, so we're limited to how many houses we can have framed a week. But if we have, let's say, six or seven houses that have their concrete slab poured in a week, then you're constantly behind because you
Hmm.
don't have the crew to go frame those houses.
Right.
So the labor shortage is a big one. The other big one, obviously, is material shortages. I mean, I could tell you there was a home that I had here that sat 60 days without no tile. Had we had the tile for that home, we could have closed it 30
Hmm.
days after.
Wow.
So we had to wait 60 days to get flooring and then another 30 days to complete that home. That's just tile. That's not getting into the other adversities we face on a day to day. You know, everything from your AC condensers, your thermostats, I mean, even blinds, little things like that. People don't they don't understand. These things have to be manufactured, they have to be delivered, then they have to be sent out, and then they have to be installed. So
Hmm.
all of that, the culmination of all these little pieces have driven our build times to over 210 days,
Oh my
which we
goodness.
used to average 130 to 140
Hmm.
uh, from time of start to time of completion was our build times.
Hmm.
So we added probably another, what is that, like 60? No, that's almost 80 more days
Hmm.
just to our build times. So
Wow.
in months, you're adding an additional possibly up to 4 or 5 months. So what used to take us from the time we start your home, that's when we poured the slab, to the time we handed you the keys, we could deliver a home in roughly about average about 4 months, maybe five. That average is now anywhere between, oh God, I would say anywhere between 6 to 8, 9, 10. You
Wow.
know, it just
Hey, so
it's hard.
I got a follow up question to this because I think it's important for people to understand. When I was going out showing houses with new construction homes, there are certain builders that would have certain requirements, like an express product, right? And you could only select certain things. Whatever they had on that model, that's it. You couldn't change anything because that messed up the prices. Now, is that, basically what I've been hearing from other builders is that's exactly what every builder is doing now. So, you really don't have that many choices anymore to what goes into that
Mhm.
house. It's a new construction home, and in today's environment, be happy, right? Is that something like what you guys are facing also?
That's exactly what we're facing right now in this market is because of those long build times. We've If you eliminate the choice factor where you send someone to go do the selections, that alone can take about 30 days.
Mm,
That's 30 days before we can submit for permits. But if you eliminate that, you could shave at least 30 days off your build time.
gotcha.
And that's what most builders are doing. They're doing that to save number one cost and they can control costs and they're not having to go source these different products. Because
Mm-hmm.
not everybody, obviously, when given the choice, not everybody is going to select out of, let's say three or four different tiles. When you're given a choice out of 20 different tiles, I mean, you have to go source those different ones.
Right.
So if you narrow it down and say, okay, we're going to put, we call them color groups, a
Mm,
certain color palette inside of a home and say, this is what we're going to put inside the home. This is how we're going to build it and we're going to sell it. You're shortening your construction time. And
right.
that's what all builders are looking to do is shorten that construction time so we can put more inventory on the ground so we can sell more homes and obviously people can move into their house.
Right. So, what kind of feedback have you, as a sales manager in your subdivisions, been receiving when those type of information is given to the public? What have you been getting?
It's, I think in the beginning it was a little difficult for people to understand, why is it that I'm paying so much money, but I'm not able to make any of these selections? And
Uh-huh.
like I said earlier, it really just goes back down to our construction time, is those build times, trying to shorten those build times.
Uh-huh.
So I think people are starting to understand a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
Maybe there's still a few out there that haven't been searching as long, but
Right.
the ones that have, they're starting to get it. They're like, wow,
They're
you're
like,
not
oh,
just the only one. This is everywhere. This is everywhere I go in the DFW. Everyone's
uh,
pretty much switched to that all inventory, all market home strategy.
right. Yeah, I remember when I first ran into that situation when I was showing some houses, or I was taking my team out to look at houses, and I'm like, so wait a minute, let me understand this. I can't change anything. I thought it was weird. I'm like, this is a new construction home. Come on.
And
Yeah.
that's what's
So.
happening across the board. I
Mm,
mean, even your higher end custom builders, they're
mm-hmm,
going to, hey, well, we're going to design this plan and we're going to build it. The only choice you have is maybe select your cabinets, maybe your flooring, but
mm,
even within those, you have parameters. Well, you only have a choice of, let's say, 5 or 6 different cabinet colors and
mm.
maybe 7 or 8 floors. And then again, that
Yeah.
goes back to trying to source it and trying to minimize cost.
Right. So we just work with a client on a new construction home and a custom home, and they still had the same thing, like what you're talking about, where they had selection and everything, colors and everything. Everything was selected: the color of the flooring, what stain it was going to be, and the walls. And in the new construction homes, like the typical, like your product or any other, I would say, mass big builders, they would have a certain color that they choose for the walls and the ceilings, basically the same color. You kind of save money doing that, right? But my client said, hey, you know what? I want white ceilings. I want that gray in on the walls, and I want white ceilings. Well, that was a $4,000 option. Okay, so here we go. Let's write some checks because man, that's what it took to get that done. And as hard as we tried negotiating that, hey, they can buy the paint for you. It's like, oh, it's not just the paint; it's the labor because now we're gonna have to cover
Exactly.
everything. So
Exactly.
it was pretty drastic. So the situation is really, really, challenging to say the least, right? But there's still opportunities out there. So tell me a little bit about your timeline. The last time I talked to you, you mentioned that you could not sell a property into a certain time or a certain stage on the build.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that so people understand what that is.
That one's pretty new to me as well. That happened as of January 1st. We changed at what stage we were able to sell these market homes. And the biggest reason for that was the price of lumber. So once lumber started to spike again, the biggest cost on building your home is going to be your foundation, your frame, your lumber, and your
Mm-hmm.
roof and your decking. Well, once they drop that frame, then you've already paid for your foundation, obviously, and then your wood comes into play. Now, all the rest of them, they're just kind of nickel and dime. Like, for instance, we're having to switch over the manufacturers for our acrylic garden tubs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting another product. It's similar to or better than, but it costs a little bit more. So let's just say it costs $50 more. Well, $50 doesn't sound like a big deal unless you have 1,000 homes that have, garbage tub, that same
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
But at that point, it becomes a big expense.
for sure.
So that's why moving forward, what happens is we're only selling them at frame stage because we've already incurred those big costs. The
Mm-hmm.
rest, the way we're handling that is, at least through History Maker, every 3 sales, we get a $2,000 price increase. So that makes up for if we have any additional expenses.
Oh wow.
We
Okay.
talk about, a lot of labor shortages. So I can tell you this, I was talking to our painter the other day, Freddie, and he was telling me he's having to hire as many people as he possibly can just to try to keep up, but he can't find them, right? So he's having to go out and pay top dollar for these people. Not only
Mm-hmm.
that, but he's having to buy new equipment. So he's
Mhm.
having to go buy new spray guns, new paintbrushes, new vans. So all this comes at a cost. So then that cost is then obviously given over to the builder, and
Mhm.
then the builder kind of trickles that down into the buyer.
Right.
So that's that's how you see these price increases just come out of nowhere. It's the little trickle effect that keeps happening.
So let me ask you this: we had another client where the it was a new construction home, and it was we offered them a certain price. They had it on the market for a certain price, so we negotiated. We were able to negotiate the price, believe it or not, down in this particular model. So, you know, I'm not gonna break my arms. Yeah, I'm just gonna break my arm, patting my back. No, but
Right.
but the problem was the appraisal. Okay, even at that price, because of the location and also the recent sales, it did not appraise. Okay, so then we had that issue with the appraisal in a new construction home. What are you guys facing any pressure with the appraisals? Because I know you and I worked one particular transaction one time, and man, we had an issue with that one. Long story short, we're not going to get into it, but there was an appraisal question, right? So, have you guys been seeing that in your with this new structure? Because
So I haven't closed a home yet in the new community, but I do set the expectation to all of my buyers up front. Because it is a new community, there is always a possibility that you're going to have appraisal issues. Because the last home that I closed here is going to be well, actually, it's going to be on the 10th of this month. And I probably won't deliver a new home over in a new community till May, June. So there's about a 5 month span between when we deliver this home and when I'm going to deliver my new home. Now, that home I sold, I actually started building it last year. So what it cost to build last year is not the same that it cost to build this year. Unfortunately, it's really hard to explain that to an appraiser. They could go out and look at the
yeah,
communities, right? And
yeah,
that's what happened with our buyer is he
mm,
had moved in there and it was we had just started that phase.
yeah,
So I didn't have anything comparable at the time because he was one of the first ones that his house was built. So can it happen? Absolutely. But that's why I make it a point to let everybody know up front. There is always that possibility. Now, the way we have it structured into our contract, if there is an appraisal shortage, you agree to pay that appraisal shortage. And the way we typically do that is now we ask for 2% earnest money. So normally we have what they call your earnest money, your options deposit. So we would use your options deposit, whatever that amount is. Then if that doesn't cover the full amount, then we would use your earnest money. And then if that doesn't cover it, you have to cover the remaining balance. Do I foresee us having any appraisal issues? I couldn't tell you because again, I don't know what the appraiser is going to do. It's third party. We don't know. I
right,
can only help guide him a little bit. And that's typically what I do is I'll go through and look at comps that I think are comparable or homes that were pre-existing that sold within the past couple of months that are similar to that square footage. And I will say this, I've looked online and there are some homes that are selling at the price that our base price is right now for the same amount of square footage. So that's going to be a saving grace whenever I do go over and start closing some of my first homes. But yeah, buyers have to be prepared to pay the difference if that home does have an appraisal shortage.
right. So I just wanted to say that as far as like appraisals for or appraised value or increase percentage wise between the December 21 to January 22, it's very minuscule, but it's still appraised at 25.5% higher, you know, on a year to year basis. So if you look at last year in January, homes were selling in January at 25% higher than last year. So that's across the board. I think the one that had the highest ones for January was actually in Parker County. But Parker County, has larger lots, bigger homes, so the price point is a little bit higher. But nevertheless, the prices are increasing, and I'm not sure, based on what's happening in the market, if these appraisers are actually taken into account, because what they have to do is, okay, I got to see what is it selling for, sold properties, okay? Sold properties is
Right.
what they look at. So, And that's the biggest concern, because in your situation, like you stated, being in a community, you have to use those surrounding areas. So hopefully that surrounding area supports those price increases, because otherwise there's going to be a lot of not a lot, but some people that may not be happy, because that always
Right.
happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay. Parting words. Do you have anything that you want to give to these agents regarding the information that we just finished discussing?
Absolutely. So this is what I've been
Get on your soapbox.
If you have the opportunity to write a contract on it, actually, you know what? Let me back up a little bit. Another fair warning, because I keep having agents ask me this all the time. Does your builder contract have a price escalator? I don't know if you heard about this on the news, where people are
Escalating
talking
prices.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so once you write on the contract, there's a price escalator stating that if the price goes up, you're required to pay that price at the end. So History Maker does not have that. We don't have what they call a price escalator. That's why we sell them at frame stage. But I will tell you, just have your agents be diligent when they're looking through these contracts and make sure that it's not in there. Because if it is in there, then they definitely need to prepare their buyers. Hey, if lumber triples in price again, your house could be $20,000-$30,000 more than what you contracted for. So you may be paying that difference. So that's something I've been giving everyone a fair warning about. It's like, hey, look, definitely look into that, see if it has it. But this is what I recommend.
Good advice.
I've had a few people that have missed a great opportunity, because I brought him in here. I said, listen, you're next on my list. I'm ready to contract. And they're still not 100% sure. They get wrapped up in, well, you know what? I really wanted this, or I would like to have that. And, that color scheme is not really what I wanted. So I have to kind of bring him down a little bit, and kind of give him a little reality check of what this market is like. And basically the conversation goes, in this current market, what you are trying to do is you are trying to get under contract on a home that or has all the features structurally, the square footage, bedroom, bathroom count that suits your family and your lifestyle, your day to day, and use that as your ride on that equity train to help you build that equity. So the next 4 or 5 years, when the market does stabilize a little bit, you'll have that built in. But as far as finding your home right now, there's going to be a lot of compromises. And I've had people that, said, well, I'm not ready yet. I can respect that. Come back a month later, and it's like, well, not only did that house sell the next day, but it sold. Well, let me back up. It sold for the same amount, but now it's worth probably about 10 or 15,000 more than what you would have paid for it. And they're like, well, why is that? Because the price went up. Had you signed on that dotted line, you would have had instant $10,000-$15,000 worth of equity. So if you've got a buyer that's on the fence, sometimes we need to let them know, hey, listen, you know what? This is not a market where you have much of a choice. There's going to be a lot of compromises, but you have to look at the big picture. You can't look at 5-6 years. Like, it may be longer than that, before you can pull all that equity out and use it towards something, your dream home per se.
Right.
But I definitely advise that. If you get the opportunity, definitely jump on it. All your agents out there, if their client has the opportunity to write a contract and doesn't have a price escalator on it, take it. Ride that equity train as long as you possibly can. And the only other thing I could suggest is, I'm getting this a lot, where I'll have realtors call me kind of ahead of time, and they'll say, well, I've got a buyer that wants, a certain home. Like, I'll use one of my homes, for example. They'll say, they want a Crawford plan. And the Crawford's about 1,600 square feet. It's not too big, not too small. It's fairly new, and it's still one of my more affordable prices. So I tell them, the problem with choosing one plan is that everybody wants that plan. To me, it's a little bit, I guess you can improve your odds if you broaden your horizons. You go from, hey, you know what, they could probably go between, 1,400 square feet, possibly up to 1,800 square feet. even though the price may swing a little bit, but that just opens up their parameters. The way I go to search is typically I'll go by plan, I'll go by budget. So when you're
Mm.
next on the list, I'll go down and I'll see, okay, well, Jose here, he wants, a $5 million house. So,
Yeah,
but if you have
that's
like parameters that say, hey, Johnny, put me down, or my client, he wants to be between the 300 and 350. Well, at that point, I can look and say, okay, well, next that I have coming up in frame, well, this one right here is 315. Hey, Jose, does your client want this particular home? It's, 315, 1,400 square feet. It's under his budget, and I could sell it today. Where you could say, hey, Johnny, you know what? Yeah, let me call him and see what he wants to take it. Then boom. But if he says, I want that plan specific, I may not have that one, framed for 45, 60 days. So he'll be waiting 60 days. So that
mhm,
350 may turn into, 370, 380, who knows? And
right.
so they missed out on that opportunity because they weren't able to broaden those horizons.
I think another thing that
So
is talking about, specifically what you said, when you made those phone calls and people have been turning it down, and and you're not saying that boastfully. It's basically because you have a
no,
waiting
not at
list,
all.
right? So you have a waiting list
Right.
for certain models, and or maybe square footage or even price range. I'm not sure exactly how your waiting list works, but nevertheless, if you're on that list, uh, and you get that opportunity and you still haven't bought a house or found a house elsewhere, I think it's probably a good idea to say, "Okay, yeah, I'll take it." You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, you are absolutely right. Yeah, and I'm not, I mean, I look at the big picture because I give people plenty of opportunity and I give them the spill. It's like, listen, I mean, you got to really think about this. But at the end of the day, you know what? I can't make a decision for them. So they
Right.
have to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Once I've educated the buyer, once I've showed them the facts, and at that point, they're like, hey, look, it's just not for me. That's fine. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But just understand that I'll put you back on the list for the home that you do want. You're probably going to pay more, and I probably won't be able to write another contract for you for another 6, 7 months.
I want to say this. I want to say this about you. Okay, I've worked a couple deals with you regarding purchasing a new construction home. Every time that had the opportunity to deal with you, you've been fair and honest, and that's why we're here today. Because you,
Appreciate
yeah. So there are many others, that we've talked to that definitely understand that they don't represent the buyer. Okay, and your point, you're really a manager that actually goes out and tries to provide accurate information, and you kind of see both sides of the issue. You actually try to walk on that other person's shoe and provide information for them to make a smart decision, not just hey sell my house for Johnny, but you saying hey I want to
it.
help you get into a house for you. So for those of you listening out there, you have to find a great person to work with, and I'll tell you what, Johnny's one of those people that I really value as a friend, but also as a partner in this industry. So I really appreciate your help with that. That's why you're talking today about new construction. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that, Jose. And I try to be like that because
Mhm.
being in this industry as long as I have, we know that tables do turn.
Mhm.
And the beauty of treating everybody fairly and giving them the correct information and setting those right expectations is they remember you, so they'll bring people back. They'll bring their family members. I closed on a house on Monday, as a matter of fact. So I have a whole family here now where I've sold the sisters and all the brothers a home. So this whole
Yeah.
thing has been like 5 years in the making, but the last brother finally closed on his home. And it took us a
Hey.
while to get him in here, but guess what? He's here and he's happy.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, Johnny, you know what? My family keeps telling me about you. They keep telling me about you, and I've just been dodging you, man. And he finally came in, and today was his day. It took us a while to build his house, but we got him in.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's
yeah,
great. I
I
mean,
appreciate that.
that's great. That's great. In our field as a real estate agent, also we develop those long term relationships, and that's one of our core
Right.
values with our company. And we have multiple repeat sales. Also, we have actually families that have basically adopted us as their agent. They will not go with anybody else. So definitely, I know that feeling. It's a really satisfying feeling for not only myself but also for our team and also my office manager, who is Peggy, as you know. She's definitely the one that keeps me in line, and we go out there and find those leads and get people qualified to purchase and so forth. So, but hey, anyway, so we're kind of reaching to the end of the interview. I wanted to say thank you for your time. I know you're probably gonna turn off all the lights and head home, so I really appreciate you staying there a little bit extra.
No
And
problem, man.
and if there's anything that you can think of later on that we didn't talk about here, please let me know. And we'll have you back on because I enjoy the conversation first of all, and I think you bring a lot of insight to the conversation for everybody else, who's out there shopping around. So I really appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and if you ever have any questions, or your agents or anyone ever has any
Mm,
questions, you know me, I'm an open book. I will
mm,
answer them 100% honest. You know,
mm.
I can be a little how can I say it? Almost too honest to a fault, where people may not like what I tell them. Well,
Yeah.
even if I wanted to, I couldn't sell you a home today. They're like, well, why can't you? And I get that, but
Yeah.
I will tell you how it is and not how it might be. And so, but yeah,
That's
any
good.
questions that you may ever have, whether it be regarding myself or even another builder, if it's obviously something that I can answer for you, man,
Mm.
I
And,
got you.
and just so everybody knows, we're gonna have Johnny Ayala's information, contact information, phone number, email, and the community that he's currently working at on the video description. So if there's any question, feel free to give him a call and talk to him, and then just let him know you heard it from us. Okay. So I appreciate you, Johnny. Thank you very much for your time. I know your wife is probably waiting for you at home or ready for dinner.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it, Jose. Tell Peggy I said hi.
I will. I will. He says
All
hi.
right.
Okay, Brandon. I
She's
appreciate
right
you.
there.
Yeah, she's right here. She's listening. We're actually in the process of actually thinking about selling our home and buying. So we're actually looking too. So yeah. So not for that $5 million home, man. That'll be nice, but
$5
we're not.
million home.
You just put a smile on Peggy's
Uh,
face. She's like, "What? 5 million?"
No.
what? I would
She
love to
says,
see this. She's like, wait, what did you talk? What did you talk about with him?
Yeah, hey, have you seen those videos on like Instagram where the guy presses the button? It says your current balance is $12 million. She says, "What?" All right, Johnny, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so
Hey, no
much, guy.
problem, Jose. You
Okay,
guys have
all
a
right,
good evening.
all right, you too. Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, guys. So if you guys have any questions regarding today's conversation regarding the new construction, you can give us a call at 833-722-7853. And the phone's ringing already. That's great. You can also send us an email at info@premiercastlerealty.com. Our website is www.premiercastlerealty.com or premiercastlerealty.co. You can also reach us on social media. You see our connections there at the bottom of the screen. And we're also offering seller and buyer's guide. So if you're interested in one, give us a call or send us an email / seller's guides or buyer's guide, and we'll be able to help you out. Also, you see that little scan me on the screen. That's going to our website. So if you have any questions about our products or our company, there you go. You can just scan that and put it on your phone and move to the next stage. So have a blessed day. Bye bye.